My story from Minneapolis, Minnesota. My son screamed, "You ruined my life," and I left his house.
Hey everyone. Before we dive into today's story, if you're enjoying this content, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell. Also, I love reading your comments, so please share your thoughts below. Your support means everything to me. It was a cold evening in Minneapolis, the kind of night that wrapped itself around you like a thick, suffocating blanket. At 68 years old, I thought I had seen it all. I'd buried my husband Richard just 2 years ago, after 43 years of marriage. I'd survived raising my son Brandon as practically a single mother when Richard was deployed overseas for months at a time. I'd worked 3 jobs to put Brandon through college, sacrificed my own dreams so he could chase his. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for this moment. I could feel the weight of the frigid February air pressing against me as I stood at the threshold of my son's house in the uptown neighborhood, the door wide open. The wind off Lake Calhoun cut right through my winter coat, but the cold outside was nothing compared to the ice that had formed around my heart. Inside, the echoes of his words still stung like they had been carved into my soul. "You ruined my life!" Brandon had screamed, his 32-year-old face twisted with a rage I'd never seen before. "I never asked for your help. You've always been a burden. You're the reason I can't move on. I wish you weren't even in my life." Standing there in his pristine living room, the one I had helped him furnish when he first bought the house, I felt every sacrifice I'd ever made crumble to dust. This was the same boy I had held when he had nightmares, the same teenager I had bailed out when he got arrested for underage drinking, the same young man I had co-signed loans for when no bank would give him a chance. His girlfriend Ashley stood in the corner, her arms crossed, nodding in agreement with every cruel word that came out of his mouth. I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. She had been poisoning him against me for months, and tonight, she had finally won. "Brandon," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I only wanted to help." "Help?" he exploded again. "You call controlling every aspect of my life help? You call showing up unannounced every week help? You call questioning every decision I make help?" I stood there, frozen, my hands trembling as I clutched my purse. My heart was shattering with every syllable, but something else was building inside me too, something dark and fierce that I'd kept buried for decades. And just like that, it was over. The door slammed shut behind me, and I stood there on the porch, the darkness swallowing me whole. The years of raising him, the love, the sacrifices, everything amounted to this one moment of pure, unfiltered hatred. My hands trembled as I reached for my car keys, my breath catching in my throat. For a second, I thought I would collapse right there on his perfectly manicured lawn, but I didn't. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was done. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you've sacrificed everything for, let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories give me strength. I left his house, but I didn't just leave him behind. I left behind the woman who had always put others first. I left behind the mother who had always given everything to make him happy. I left behind Dorothy Williams, the pushover, the doormat, the woman who apologized for existing. As I drove through the snowy streets of Minneapolis, my mind wandered back through the years. Each memory now felt like a cruel joke played on me by the universe. When Brandon was 7 and wanted a bike for Christmas, I worked overtime for 3 months at the diner to afford it. When he was 16 and crashed Richard's truck, I took the blame and paid for the repairs out of my own savings account. When he was 25 and his startup failed, I mortgaged my house to give him money to try again. But somewhere along the way, my beautiful, sweet boy had turned into someone I didn't recognize. The kindness had turned to arrogance. The gratitude had turned to resentment. And I had become the enemy in his story. It wasn't just tonight's words. It had been building for years. The constant criticism, the way he rolled his eyes when I spoke, the way he made me feel stupid for not understanding his complicated life, the way Ashley would smirk when I suggested family dinners or asked about grandchildren. I could feel my anger bubbling up, thick and sharp, like a knife ready to slice through everything I had ever known about myself. The final straw had been tonight's dinner. I had simply asked if he was happy. Really, truly happy. And that's when he unleashed years of pent-up resentment, telling me I was the reason he couldn't move forward in life, that my constant presence was suffocating him. "You never let me breathe," he had screamed. "You never let me make my own choices without your opinion." And now, he was going to learn what life was like without me. But more than that, he was going to pay for what he'd done to me. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear how this story ends. And please, please, hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm. I spent the next few days in my small apartment on Lyndale Avenue, the weight of his words suffocating me. My phone sat silent on the kitchen table. No calls, no texts, no apologies. It was as if 32 years of being his mother had been erased in one night. But something inside of me started to shift during those quiet February days. Brandon thought he had won. He thought that by cutting me out, by attacking me with every piece of venom he had stored up, he could break me. He thought I would crumble, maybe even disappear from his life entirely, making things easier for him and his precious Ashley. But he had underestimated me. Badly. I was no longer the same person he had known. I had spent years bending, breaking, and sacrificing for him, only for him to turn around and throw it all in my face like garbage. For too long, I had been Dorothy the doormat, Dorothy the people-pleaser, Dorothy who apologized for taking up space in the world. But that Dorothy was dead. She had died on his front porch in the Minnesota cold. Now, it was time for him to feel what it was like to be betrayed, to be abandoned, to watch everything you care about slip through your fingers. So, I made my plan. You guys, the comments on my last video were incredible. Keep them coming. And if you're new here, definitely subscribe, because this story is just getting started. I knew exactly where it would hurt him the most: his career, his reputation, his carefully constructed world of success that he so proudly flaunted on social media. Brandon worked as a marketing consultant for several high-end restaurants in Minneapolis. His whole image was built on being this successful, together young professional. He posted constantly on LinkedIn about his achievements, his client victories, his gratitude for the opportunities life has given him, never once mentioning the woman who had made it all possible. I started small, subtle, strategic moves that would have made Richard proud. My late husband had been in military intelligence, and he'd taught me a thing or two about patience and planning. First, I began showing up at his clients' restaurants. Not to cause scenes. I'm not that type of person. But I made sure to become a regular customer at Mario's Italian Bistro, the place where Brandon had landed his biggest account. I befriended the owner, Maria, over weeks of pleasant dinner conversations. I learned about her family, her struggles with keeping good staff, her concerns about the marketing strategy that some young consultant had sold her on. "You know," I mentioned casually one evening, "I heard from a friend that the marketing company handling your account has been overcharging some of their other clients. taking credit for results they didn't really achieve. I planted seeds of doubt with surgical precision. I made sure to show up at the coffee shop where Brandon held his client meetings, sitting just close enough to overhear conversations, just visible enough that he would eventually notice me. Every text message I didn't send, every call I didn't make, every birthday that passed without acknowledgement, it all contributed to his growing paranoia. He had expected me to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. Instead, I had vanished from his life completely, except for these strange coincidences where I seemed to be everywhere his business was. Make sure to like this video if you want to see what happened next. The story gets even crazier. 3 weeks after that terrible night, I got my first confirmation that my plan was working. I was having coffee at Caribou on Grand Avenue when I saw Ashley storm in, her face red with anger. She was on her phone, and her voice carried across the cafe. "Brandon, you're being paranoid," she snapped. "Your mother isn't some criminal mastermind. She's just a bitter old woman." But I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. And when Brandon came to pick her up 20 minutes later, I saw something beautiful. The first cracks in his perfect facade. His clothes were wrinkled. His hair wasn't styled with its usual precision. There were dark circles under his eyes. He was starting to unravel. That same week, I made my move with his second biggest client, the trendy gastropub called The Lynx. I had done my homework on the owner, Jake Thompson, and I knew he was struggling with debt. During one of my regular visits, I mentioned that I'd heard from a friend in the industry that some marketing consultants were padding their bills, charging for services they weren't actually providing. "You might want to audit your marketing expenses," I suggested sweetly, "just to make sure you're getting what you're paying for." Jake's expression shifted immediately. "You know what? That's not a bad idea." The beauty of my plan was that I never lied. I never said Brandon was definitely doing anything wrong. I just planted questions, let people's natural suspicions do the work for me. Comment below if you think my plan was justified. I love hearing your perspectives. A week later, I got the first phone call. "Why are you doing this to me?" Brandon's voice was strained, desperate, a tone I'd never heard from him before. "I thought we were past this. I thought you were done with me." I was sitting in my living room, looking out at the snow-covered street, feeling calmer than I had in years. I let the silence sit between us for a moment. His breath, ragged and frantic, filled the air on the other end of the line. "Brandon," I said quietly, my voice steady as steel, "I haven't done anything to you." "Don't lie to me," he exploded. "You've been going to my clients' restaurants. You've been asking questions, spreading rumors." "I've been dining out," I interrupted. "Is that against the law? Am I not allowed to eat in restaurants in my own city?" "You know what you're doing." "What I'm doing," I said, letting each word drop like a stone, "is living my life. The life you told me you didn't want me to be part of." There was a long pause. I could practically hear his mind racing, trying to figure out how to handle this new version of his mother. "Look," he said finally, his voice changing tactics, becoming the manipulative tone he'd perfected over the years. "Maybe we both said some things we didn't mean." "Oh no, sweetheart," I cut him off. "You were very clear about what you meant. You wished I wasn't in your life. Well, congratulations. You got your wish." Guys, I'm getting chills just remembering this conversation. If you're loving this story, please hit that subscribe button. The consequences came faster than even I had anticipated. Within 2 weeks of that phone call, Brandon lost the Mario's account. Maria had indeed audited his work and found several discrepancies in his billing. Nothing illegal, but enough to make her question whether she was getting her money's worth. The links dropped him the following week. Jake had discovered that Brandon had been charging for social media management while outsourcing the actual work to a college intern for a fraction of the cost. But the real blow came when word started spreading through Minneapolis's tight-knit restaurant community. Business owners talk to each other, especially when they feel they've been taken advantage of. Brandon's reputation, which he had spent years building, crumbled in a matter of weeks. His social media presence, once full of confident posts about his success, became sporadic and defensive. He started posting long rants about toxic people and family betrayal, which only made him look more unstable to potential clients. Ashley, who had been so quick to support his cruelty toward me, was not quite so loyal when his income disappeared. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she had moved out, claiming she needed space to think. The comments are going crazy on this video. Keep them coming. And don't forget to share this with anyone who's dealt with ungrateful family members. 2 months after that cold February night, Brandon showed up at my apartment. I heard the familiar sound of his footsteps on the stairs, heavier now, lacking the confident stride he used to have. When I opened the door, I barely recognized the man standing there. His clothes hung loose on his frame. His hair was unkempt. But it was his eyes that told the real story. They were hollow, desperate, defeated. "Mom," he whispered, and for a moment I saw the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Please, I was wrong. I didn't mean it. Please, I need your help." The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. Here was my son, the one who had told me I ruined his life, standing on my doorstep begging for the help he had so viciously rejected. "I'm done helping you," I told him, my voice final as a judge's gavel. "I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? It's too late, Brandon." "But I'm your son," he cried, and I saw tears streaming down his face. "You can't just abandon me." "The way you abandoned me?" I asked quietly. "The way you threw away 32 years of love and sacrifice in one night?" He tried to push past me into the apartment, but I blocked his way. This frail, 68-year-old woman he had always seen as weak was stronger than he had ever imagined. "Please," he begged. "Ashley left me. I'm behind on my mortgage. I don't know what to do." "You should have thought about that before you decided I was a burden," I replied. "Before you decided you wished I wasn't in your life. Like this video if you think he got what he deserved. And please, please subscribe. I post new stories every day." As I watched him crumble on my doorstep, my satisfaction was complete. He had ruined his own life, and I had just been the catalyst. The beautiful thing about my revenge was that I had never done anything wrong. I had simply removed myself from his life, just as he had demanded. I had stopped being the safety net he had always taken for granted. I had stopped being the woman who cleaned up his messes and made his problems disappear. Without me, Brandon had to face the consequences of his own actions for the first time in his adult life, and he couldn't handle it. But now, I had my peace. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. I was no longer the mother who would put everyone else first. I was no longer Dorothy the doormat. I was Dorothy the woman who knew her worth, who wouldn't tolerate disrespect, who had learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone face the consequences of their choices. As I closed the door on my son's tear-streaked face, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: complete and total freedom. What do you think? Did I go too far? Or did Brandon deserve everything that happened to him? Let me know in the comments. And remember, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more incredible true stories like this one. Your support means the world to me, and I'll see you in the next video.